Volkswagen today said it is planning to invest $7.1 billion on manufacturing in North America as it transitions to all electric vehicles, targeting the end of the decade for that. Volkswagen Group of America President and CEO Scott Keogh is joining us now. Scott, apparently you and I missed each other in Austin, Texas last week. We were ships passing in the night, unfortunately, but we're glad to have you here now. When we look at the plan for this money, among other things, it's my understanding that you are going to integrate your assembly lines for gas-powered and electric vehicles. How does that work exactly? Because the construction process, from as I understand it, is pretty different.
Yeah, actually, we're doing it right now in Chattanooga, and I was just down there just a few days ago, and it's working quite well. I mean, you have to look at it. A factory is basically paint, body, and assembly. So the paint shop is merged, the body shop is merged already, and then we have two separate assembly lines. But actually, the integration works quite well. The hats of two vehicles are similar. Of course, as you know, the platform's entirely different. But for us, it works because it meets what's happening in America. America is undergoing a transition, and you need the factories to represent that transition, basically.
God, I love the new bus behind you. Talk to us a little bit about it. How big of a sales driver do you think it could be for VW?
I think first and foremost, it's an absolute just brand love vehicle. Having spent some time down in Austin, everywhere you go, it puts a smile on someone's face. So I think the sales will be great. The fact of the matter is I've never seen this much demand for a vehicle. I get emails from dealers. I get paintings from small children. I get hugs from grandmothers. They want to be first in line. So this thing just covers every spectrum imaginable. So I think it's going to be a home run. We just gotta get it here.
Well, yeah, Scott, to that point, are you going to be able to make Granny and her grandson happy here? Can you get these vehicles to market given the supply chain constraints we continue to see in Autoland?
Look, this vehicle is going to hit the market in 24. We want to do a specific version for the U.S. market. This is going to have a third row. It's going to have a bigger battery. It's going to have a performance drive unit. I think and hope things will be a little bit more stabilized. But of course, the instant I say that, there seems to be some new global issue. But I feel relatively confident. We've done a decent job at Volkswagen. We're up 15% last year, so we navigated the chip crises pretty good. If I look at our battery supply with what we have coming from SK Innovation in Georgia, relatively stable. So I think we've covered our bets. And frankly, that's what this investment's about, continuing to localize to get stability in the region on many of these things.
So, Scott, talk to us a little bit more about that, because obviously, leaving the bus aside for a second, it sounds like you all have managed to stay relatively well supplied in what's been a really challenging environment. You've got the partnership with SK, but a lot of other stuff still has to be imported, right, into the country, including chips. What do you think, and what is this investment going towards that's going to maybe help alleviate all of that in the longer run?
Yeah, I think the first biggest thing is this investment's strategic. We're undergoing the massive transformation into electrification. So what does that mean? One's more electric products. So we have the buzz behind us. We'll be announcing more SUVs. So investing in products. Obviously, the factories. We made the first invest in Chattanooga, as you know. But of course, we have a factory in Mexico. We have component plants. These all need to be transitioned. So it's a massive invest into the factories. And yes, all of that is certainly helping us stabilize the situation with regard to chips. If I look at chips themselves, at least somewhat in the second half of this year, it seems to be getting in a better position. And hopefully that will reflect itself. But make no mistake, the market is still structurally underserved from a chip point of view. You know what's happening with consumer demand, whether it's being from televisions or iPads and on and on. There's still structural in terms of not enough chips being out there. But again, we can navigate it. I think the upside of what you're seeing is the margin and the pricing power in the marketplace, frankly, has never been better. So that's the flip side of this very high demand.
Within the next decade, do you think VW will still be making gas-powered cars for the U.S. market?
Look, I think for us, we'll be at about 55% of our mix by 2030. So that's 8 years away. I think by 2035 or early 2030s, it will be nearly 100%. So I think this spin and adoption is happening rapidly. Now, on some respects, if we're straightforward, it's happening from the legislative point of view. The state of California plus the other ZEV states, that's 50% of the business. They have legislation in place that says zero by 2035. If I look at what the federal EPA and Biden's putting on the table, they're almost mimicking that. So it's a little blend of the market's heading there, legislation is heading there, and the invest is there. I think if there was two segments I was going to continue to look after, there's vehicles that are still priced in the low 20s right now. I think we're still going to need to be there. I'm not sure if all of America is going to be able to make this leap. I also think vehicles like the Atlas, 3 rows, 4 families, very affordable. I think these vehicles will linger through the early 2030s, from what I can see of American purchasing habits.
And Scott, what you're talking about kind of leads me to the next question, which we've been watching some of the large US-based automakers and investors sort of grapple with where we are in this transition. And I wonder if investors, from that perspective, kind of got a little ahead of themselves, given that what you're talking about is a sort of, as you say, a decade out still, perhaps.
Yeah, look, I think Wall Street does what it does. And what Wall Street does is quite clear. They look to the future, and I think there's no debate the future is heading electric. If you look at it, though, the good news is the big risk at the beginning of this transformation was, of course, the regulations are on board, the investment's on board, Wall Street's on board, is the consumer on board? And the big point I've been making is the consumer does not walk into a Volkswagen or any showroom and say, I need to help Volkswagen meet their regulations, or I need to help Volkswagen because they've made this big investment. The huge news is now the American consumer is on board. And honestly, it's exploding. When we made this bet 3 years ago in Chattanooga, the EV marketplace was 0.4, somewhere in there. Now it's about 6%. We're going to sell 1 million EVs in America overall. So the good news is the American consumer is getting on board, and it's really taking off. I think the truth is, I think it will get to 50 to 60% quite quickly. It's those final percentage points that are going to be the challenge, depending on geography and income and everything else that comes with that.
As part of your role, Scott, in the U.S., you oversee Bentley and Lamborghini. Now, these are two super high luxury brands that, I would argue people flock to these brands, of course, because of the name, but also the driving experience, the sound of a Lamborghini engine, the sound or the experience of a Bentley. How difficult will it be for brands like this to make that EV transition?
I think two things. I think if you look at those two brands, the good news, of course, all of the regulations get consolidated under the Volkswagen Group. So it's looked upon as one entity. So certainly brands like Audi and Volkswagen can help with brands like Lamborghini and Bentley. But the second one, honestly, is a myth. I have no doubts the engineers at Bentley, the engineers at Lamborghini can bring those vehicles to life electrified. I think, as you know, the torque is through the roof, so the driving experience will be insane. If you look at where the battery's placed, it's low and wide. That gives you great center of gravity for vehicle dynamics. So if you look at what they've been presenting, I have no doubts they'll do a proper Lambo and a proper Bentley electrified. So they may be a little bit behind Audi and Volkswagen on the curve, but 100% they have the products and they're coming as well. And honestly, I think those buyers, many of them, it's their third or fourth car, it's not the primary car, are going to love electrification, full stop.
Well, if you guys can make Mystery Machine electric, I guess anything is possible.
Amen.
Scott,
I like the summer of love that you had. The summer of love that you had on the previous interview. So here's the summer of love right here.
We got to
just go out and buy a Lamborghini. Forget the diamonds.
Scott, thanks so much. It's good to see you.